Hi, this is chapter 9 of The Outsiders. It was almost 6:30 when I got home. The rumble was set for 7, so I was late for supper as usual. I always come in late. I forget what time it is. Gary had cooked dinner, baked chicken and potatoes and corn, 2 chickens because all 3 of us eat like horses, especially Gary. Although I love baked chicken, I could hardly swallow any. I swallowed 5 aspirins, though, when Gary and Soda weren't looking. I do that all the time because I can't sleep very well at night. Gary thinks I take just 1, but usually I take 4. I figured 5 would keep me going through the rumble and maybe get rid of this headache. Then I hurried to take a shower and change clothes. Me and Soda and Gary always got spruced up before a rumble. And besides, we wanted to show those socias that we weren't trash, that we were just as good as they were. Soda, I called from the bathroom, when did you start shaving? When I was 15, he yelled back. When did Gary? Me was 13. Why? You figure on growing a beard for a rumble? You're funny. We ought to send you into Reader's Digest. I hear they pay a lot for funny things. Here's a Reader's Digest cartoon. They were kind of like the funny thing back then. Soda laughed and went right on playing poker with Steve in the living room. Gary had on a tight black t-shirt that showed every muscle in his chest and even the flat, hard muscles of his stomach. I'd hate to be the Soch who takes a crack at him, I thought, as I put on a clean t-shirt and a fresh pair of jeans. I wish my t-shirt was tighter. I have a pretty good build for my size, but I lost a lot of weight in Winterspell, and it just didn't fit right. It was a chilly night, and t-shirts weren't the warmest clothes in the world, but nobody ever gets cold in a rumble. Besides, jackets interfere with your swinging ability. Soda and Steve and I had put on more hair oil than was necessary, but we wanted to show that we were greasers. Tonight, we could be proud of it. Greasers may not have much, but they have a reputation, that and long hair. What kind of world is it where all I have to be proud of is a reputation for being a hood and greasy hair? I don't want to be a hood, but even if I don't steal things and mug people and get drunk, I'm marked as lousy. Boosted. Okay, so here's this quote. Let me see if I can move this. Here we go. I don't want to be a hood, but even if I don't steal things and mug people and get boosted up, I'm marked as lousy. Why should I be proud of it? Why should I even pretend to be proud of it? So this is what we call a tough question. Oops. And a tough question is when the character asks themselves a question. Like, we've used the skill of asking questions about what we read previously, but this is when a question comes up within the reading that the character actually asks themselves. When that happens, you're going to stop and ask, what does the question make me wonder about? So then once you answer that, the answers to that question will tell you about conflict and foreshadow what will happen later in the story. So that is that tough question. All right. Gary never went in for the long hair. His was short and clean all the time. I sat in the armchair in the living room waiting for the rest of our group to show up. But of course, tonight the only one coming would be Two-Bit. Johnny and Dallas wouldn't show. Soda and Steve were playing cards and arguing as usual. Soda kept up a steady stream of wisecracks and clowning, and Steve had turned up the radio so loud that it almost broke my eardrums. Of course, everybody listens to it loud like that. It just wasn't the best thing for my headache right then. You like fights, don't you, Soda? I asked suddenly. Yeah, sure, he said. I like fights. How come? I don't know. He looked at me puzzled. It's action. It's a contest, like a drag race or a dance or something. Shoot, Steve said. I want to beat those Soch's heads in. When I get in a fight, I want to stomp the other guy good. I like it too. How come you like fights, Gary? I asked, looking up at him as he stood behind me, leaning in the kitchen doorway. He gave me one of those looks that hide what he's thinking, but Soda picked up. He likes to show off his muscles. I'm going to show him off on you, little buddy, if you get any mouth here. I digested what Soda said. It was the truth. Gary liked anything that took strength, like weightlifting or playing football or roofing houses, even if he was being smart, proud of being smart too, even if he was proud to be smart too. Gary never said anything about it, but I knew he liked fights. I felt out of things. I'll fight anyone anytime, but I don't like to. I don't know if you should be in this rumble tonight, Pony, Gary said slowly. Oh no, I thought in mortal fear. I've got to be in it. Right then, the most important thing in my life was helping us whip the Sochs. Don't let him make me stay home now. I thought, I've got to be in it. How come? I've always come through before, ain't I? Yeah, Derry said with a proud grin. You fight real good for a kid your size. But you were in shape before. Now you've lost weight and you don't look so great, kid. You're tensed up too much. Shoot, Soda said, trying to get the ace out of his shoe so he could cheat on cards without Steve seeing him. We all get tensed up before a rumble. Let him fight tonight. Skin never hurt anyone. No weapons, no danger. I'll be okay, I pleaded. I'll get a hold of a little one, okay? Well, Johnny won't be here this time. Johnny and I sometimes ganged up on one big guy together. But then Curly Shepherd won't be there either, or Dally, and we'll need everyone we can get. What happened to Shepherd? I asked, remembering Tim Shepherd's kid brother, Curly, who was a tough, cool, hard as nails Tim in miniature. And I had once played chicken with him by holding our cigarette ends against each other's fingers. We had stood there, clenching our teeth and grimacing, with sweat pouring down our faces and the smell of burning flesh making us sick, each refusing to holler until Tim happened to stroll by. When he saw that we were really burning holes in each other, he cracked our heads together, swearing to kill us both if we ever pulled a stunt like that again. I still have a scar on my forefinger. Curly was an average downtown hood, tough and not real bright, but I liked him, and he could take anything. He's in the cooler, Steve said, picking the ace out of Soda's shoe, in the reformatory. Again, I thought, and said, let me fight Derry. If it was blades or chains or something else, it would be different. Nobody ever really gets hurt in a skin rumble. Well, Derry gave in. I guess you can, but be careful, and if you get in a jam, holler, and I'll get you out. I'll be okay, I said wearily. How come you never worry about Soda Pop as much? I don't see you lecturing him. Man, Derry grinned and put his arm across Soda's shoulder. This is one kid brother I don't have to worry about. Soda punched him in the ribs affectionately. This kiddo can use his head. Soda Pop looked down at me with mock superiority, but Derry went on. You can see he uses it for one thing, to grow hair on. He ducked Soda's swing and took off for the door. Two-Bit stuck his head in the door just as Derry went flying out of it, leaping as he went off the steps. Derry turned a somersault in midair, hit the ground, and bounced up before Soda could catch him. Well, Two-Bit said cheerfully, cocking an eyebrow, I see we are in prime condition for a rumble. Is everybody happy? Yeah, screamed Soda as he too did a flying somersault off the steps. He flipped up to walk on his hands and then a no-hands cartwheel across the yard to beat Derry's performance. The excitement was catching. Screeching, Steve went running across the lawn in flying leaps, stopped suddenly and flipped backwards. We could all do acrobatics because Derry had taken a course at the Y. And here's what they mean by the Y. It just means the YMCA, like the local gym. And then spent a whole summer teaching us everything he'd learned on the grounds that it might come in handy in a fight. It did, but it also got Two-Bit and Soda jailed once. They were doing mid-air flips on a downtown sidewalk, walking on their hands, and otherwise disturbing the public and the police. Leave it to those two to pull something like that. With a happy whoop, I did a no-hands cartwheel off the porch steps, hit the ground, and rolled to my feet. Two-Bit followed me in a similar manner. I am a greaser, Soda Pop chanted. I am a JD and a hood. I blacken the name of our fair city. I beat people up. I rob gas stations. I'm a menace to society. But man, do I have fun! Greaser, 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 Steve sing-songed. Oh, victim of the environment, underprivileged, rotten, no-account hood. Juvenile delinquent, you're no good, Derry shouted. Get thee hence, white trash, Two-Bit said in a snobbish voice. I am a soch. I am the privileged and well-dressed. I throw beer blasts and drive fancy cars and break windows at fancy parties. And what do you do for fun? I required in a mock, serious, odd voice. I jump greasers, Two-Bit screamed and did a cartwheel. We settled down as we walked to the lot. Two-Bit was the only one wearing a jacket. He had a couple of cans of beer stuffed in it. He always gets drunk before a rumble. Before anything else, too, come to think of it. I shook my head. I'd hate to see the day when I had to get my nerve from a can. I tried drinking once before. The stuff tasted awful. I got sick and had a headache, and when Derry found out, he grounded me for 2 weeks, but that was the last time I had ever drank. It seemed too much of what drinking did for you at Johnny's house. Hey, Two-Bit, I said, deciding to complete my survey. How come you like to fight? He looked at me as if I was off my nut. Shoo, everybody fights. If everybody jumped in the Arkansas River, old Two-Bit would be right on their heels. I had it then. Soda fought for fun, Steve for hatred, Derry for pride, and Two-Bit for conformity. Why do I fight, I thought. And I couldn't think of any real good reason. There isn't any real good reason for fighting, except self-defense. So this is another example of a tough question, because Booney Boy is asking himself, why do I fight? And so you want to take time to wonder, to say, what does that make you wonder about? If so, Ponyboy is stopping and asking himself, why do I fight? And he kind of answers it with the only good reason is to self-defense. But in the Rumble, this isn't self-defense. So something to think about. And then your answer to what you're wondering about will tell you about conflict and foreshadow what might happen later. Drink break. Listen, Soda, you and Ponyboy, Derry said as we strolled down the street. If the Fuzz show, Fuzz means police, you two beat it out of there. The rest of us can only get jailed. You two can get sent to a boys' home. Nobody in this neighborhood's going to call the Fuzz, Steve said grimly. You know what would happen if they did. All the same, you two blow the first signs of trouble, you hear me? You sure don't need an amplifier, Soda said and stuck his tongue out at the back of Derry's head. I stifled a laugh. If you want to see something funny, it's a tough hood sticking his tongue out at his big brother. Tim Shepard and company were already waiting when we arrived at the vacant lot, along with the gang from Brumley, one of the suburbs. Tim was a lean, cat-like 18-year-old who looked like the model JD you see in movies and magazines. Remember, JD is a juvenile delinquent, so it's a teen criminal. He had curly black hair, smoldering dark eyes, and a long scar from temple to chin, where a tramp had belted him with a broken pop bottle. He had a tough, hard look to him. His nose had been broken twice. Like Dally's, his smile was grim and bitter. He was one of those who enjoy being a hood. The rest of his bunch were the same way. The boys from Brumley, too. Young hoods who grew up to be older hoods. I never thought about it before, but they just get worse as they got older, not better. I looked at Derry. He wasn't going to be a hood when he got older. He was going to go somewhere. Living the way we do would only make him more determined to go somewhere. That's why he's better than the rest of us, I thought. He's going somewhere. And I'm going to be like him. I'm not going to live in a lousy neighborhood all my life. Tim had the tense, angry, hungry look of an alley cat. That's what he's always reminded me of, an alley cat. And here's a picture of an alley cat. He was constantly restless. His boys ranged from 15 to 19, hard-looking characters that were used to the strict discipline Tim gave out. That was the difference between his gang and ours. They had a leader and were organized. We were just buddies who stuck together. Each man was his own leader. Maybe that's why we could beat them. Tim and the leader of the Brumley outfit moved forward to shake hands with each of us, proving that our gangs were on the same side in this fight, although most of the guys in those two outfits weren't exactly what I'd like to call my friends. And when Tim got to me, he studied me, maybe remembering how his kid brother and I had played chicken with the cigarettes. You and that quiet black-headed kid were the ones who killed that Soch? Yeah, I said, pretending to be proud of it. And then I thought of Cherry and Randy and got a sick feeling in my stomach. Good going, kid. Curly always said that you were a good kid. Curly's in the reformatory for the next 6 months. Tim grinned ruefully, probably thinking of his roughneck, hard-headed brother. He got caught breaking into a liquor store that little. He went on to call Curly every unprintable name under the sun. In Tim's way of thinking, terms of affection. I surveyed the scene with pride. I was the youngest one there. Even Curly, if he had been there, had turned 15, so he was older than me. I could tell Derry realized this too, and although he was proud, I also knew he was worried. Shoot, I thought, I'll fight so good this time he won't ever worry about me again. I'll show him that someone besides Soda Pop can use his head. One of the Brumley guys waved me over. We mostly stuck with our own outfit, so I was a little leery of going over to him, but I shrugged. He asked to borrow a cigarette and then lit up. That big guy with y'all, you know him pretty well? I had to, he's my brother, I said. I couldn't honestly say yes. I knew Derry as well as he knew me, but that wasn't saying a whole lot. No kidding. I got a feeling he's going to be asked to start the fireworks around here. He a good bopper? He meant rumbler. Those Brumley boys have weird vocabularies. I doubt if half of them can read a newspaper or spell much more than their names, and it comes out in their speech. I mean, take a guy that calls a rumble bop action, and you can tell that he isn't real educated. Yeah, I said, but why him? He shrugged. Why anybody else? I looked our outfits over. Most greasers don't have real tough builds or anything. They're mostly lean and kind of panther-looking in a slouchy way. This is partly because they don't eat much and partly because they're slouchy. Derry looked like he could whip anyone there. I think most of the guys were nervous because of the no weapons rule. I don't know about the Brumley boys, but I knew Tim Shepard's gang were used to fighting with anything they could get their hands on. Bicycle chains, blades, pop bottles, pieces of pipe, pool sticks, or sometimes even heaters. I mean guns. I kind of have a lousy vocabulary too, even if I am educated. Our gang has never gone in for weapons. We're just not that rough. The only weapons we ever used were knives and shoot. We carried them mostly for looks, to intimidate people. Like Two-Bit with his black-handled switchblade. None of us ever really hurt anybody or wanted to. Just Johnny, and he hadn't wanted to. Okay, pause. Hey, Curtis, Tim yelled. I jumped. Which one? I heard Soda yell back. The big one. Come on over here. The guy from Brumley looked at me. What'd I tell you? I watched Derry going towards Tim and the leader of the Brumley boys. He shouldn't be here, I thought suddenly. I shouldn't be here, and Steve shouldn't be here, and Soda shouldn't be here, and Two-Bit shouldn't be here. We're greasers, but we're not hoods. We're not criminals. And we don't belong with this bunch of future convicts. We could end up like them, I thought. We could. And that thought didn't help my headache at all. So that realization is an example of an aha moment, and I think you guys are pretty familiar with those. That's when a character suddenly realizes something, that they're different, that Ponyboy realizes that he and his friends are different from the other gangs and the other greasers, but they could still end up like them with the same futures. So when a character realizes something, you want to stop and ask, how might this change things? And then once you've come up with an answer to that question, look at your answer and see how it applies to these items here. I went back to stand with Soda and Steve and Two-Bit then, because the Socias were arriving, right on time. They came in 4 carloads and filed out silently. I counted 22 of them. There were 20 of us greasers, so I figured the odds were as even as we could get them. Derry always liked to take on 2 guys at a time anyway. All the Socias looked like they were cut from the same piece of cloth, clean-shaven with semi-beetle haircuts. And I think, yeah, here's beetle haircuts, and they referenced this before, so you can get an idea of what they look like. Wearing striped or checkered shirts with light red or tan colored jackets or mattress ski jackets. They could just as easily have been going to the movies as to a rumble. That's why people never think to blame the Socias and are always ready to jump on us. We look hoodie and they look decent. It could just be the other way around. Half the hoods I know are pretty decent guys underneath all that grease. And from what I've heard, a lot of Socias are just cold-blooded mean. But people usually go by looks. They lined up silently facing us, and we lined up facing them. I looked for Randy, but didn't see him. I hoped that he wasn't there. A guy with a mattress shirt stepped up. Let's get the rules straight. Nothing but our fists, and the first to run lose, right? Tim flipped away his beer can. You sound real good. There was an uneasy silence. Who was going to start it? Derry solved the problem. He stepped forward under the circle of light made by the street lamp. For a minute, everything looked unreal, like the scene out of a J.D. movie or something. Then Derry said, I'll take on anyone. He stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, his muscles taut under his t-shirt and his eyes glittering like ice. For a second, it looked like there wasn't anyone brave enough to take him on. Then there was a slight stir in the faceless mob of Socias, and a husky blonde guy stepped forward. He looked at Derry and said quietly, Hello, Daryl. Something flickered behind Derry's eyes, and then they were ice again. Hello, Paul. I heard Soda gave a kind of squeak, and I realized that blonde guy was Paul Holden. He had been the best halfback on Derry's football team in high school, and he and Derry used to buddy it around all the time. He must be a junior in college by now, I thought. He was looking at Derry with an expression I couldn't quite place, but disliked. Contempt, which means hatred. Pity, hate, all 3. Why? Because Derry was standing there representing all of us, and maybe because Paul only felt contempt and pity and hate for greasers? Derry hadn't moved a muscle or changed expression, but you could see he hated Paul now. It wasn't only jealousy. Jealousy. Derry had a right to be jealous, but he was ashamed to be on our side, ashamed to be seen with people like the Brumley boys, Shepherd's gang, and maybe even us. Nobody realized it but me and Soda. It didn't really matter to anyone but me and Soda. That's stupid, I thought swiftly. They've both come here to fight, and they're both supposed to be smarter than that. What difference does the side that they're on make? Then Paul said, I'll take you. And something like a smile crossed Derry's face. I knew Derry thought he could take Paul any time. But that was 2 or 3 years ago. What if Paul was better now? I swallowed. Neither one of my brothers had ever been beaten in a fight, but I wasn't exactly itching for someone to break that record. They moved in a circle under the light counterclockwise, eyeing each other, sizing each other up. Maybe remembering old faults and wondering if they were still there. The rest of us waited with mounting tension. I was reminded of Jack London's book, where the wolf pack waits in silence. Here's a good picture of that. For one of two members to go down in a fight. But it was different here. The moment either one of these guys swung a punch, the rumble would be on. The silence grew heavier. I could hear the harsh and heavy breathing of the boys around me. Still, Derry and the Soch walked slowly in a circle. Even I could feel their hatred. They used to be buddies, I thought. They used to be friends, and now they hate each other because one has to work for a living and the other one comes from the West Side with money. They shouldn't hate each other. I don't hate the Soches anymore. They shouldn't hate. Hold up! A familiar voice called. Hold it! Derry turned to see who it was, and right when he turned, Paul swung, a hard right to the jaw that would have felled anyone but Derry. The rumble was on, and Dally Winston ran to join us. I couldn't find a Soch my size, so I took the next best size and jumped on him. Dally was right beside me, already on top of someone. I thought you were in the hospital, I yelled as the Soch knocked me to the ground and I rolled to avoid getting kicked. I was. Dally was having a hard time because his left arm was still in bad shape. I ain't now. How? I managed to ask as the Soch I was fighting leaped on me and we rolled near Dally. Got the nurse into it with Tuba's switchblade. Don't you know a rumble ain't a rumble unless I'm in it? I couldn't answer because the Soch, who was heavier than I took him for, had me pinned and was slugging the sense out of me. I thought dizzily that he was going to knock some of my teeth loose or break my nose or something. But I knew he didn't have a chance. And I knew I didn't have a chance. Derry was keeping an eye out for me. He caught that guy by the shoulder, half lifted him up before knocking him 3 feet with a sledgehammer blow. I decided it would be fair for me to help Dally since he could only use one arm. They were slugging it out, but Dally was getting the worst of it, so I jumped on his Soch's back, pulling his hair and pounding him. He reached back and caught me by the neck and threw me over his head on the ground. Tim Shepard, who was fighting 2 guys at once, accidentally stepped on me, knocking my breath out. I was up again as soon as I got my wind back and jumped right back on the Soch, trying my best to strangle him. While he was prying my fingers loose, Dally knocked him backwards so that all 3 of us rolled on the ground, gasping, cussing, and punching. Somebody kicked me hard in the ribs, and I yelped in spite of myself. Some Soch had knocked out one of our bunch and was kicking me as hard as he could. But I had both arms wrapped around the other Soch's neck and refused to let go. Dally was slugging him, and I hung on desperately, although the other Soch was kicking me, and you'd better believe it hurt. Finally, he kicked me in the head so hard it stunned me, and I lay limp, trying to clear my mind and keep from blacking out. All I could hear was the racket, but only dimly through the buzzing in my ears. Numerous bruises along my back and on my face were throbbing, but I felt detached from the pain, as if it wasn't really me feeling it. They're running, I heard a voice yell joyfully. Look at those dirty guys run! It seemed to me that the voice might have belonged to Two-Bit, but I couldn't really be sure. I tried to sit up, and I saw that the Soches were getting into their cars and leaving. Tim Shepard was swearing blue and green because his nose was broken again, and the leader of the Brumley boys was working over one of his own men because he had broken the rules and used a piece of pipe in the fighting. Steve lay doubled up and groaning about 10 feet from me. We found out later that he had broken 3 ribs. Soda Pop was beside him, talking to him in a low, steady voice. I did a double take when I saw Two-Bit. Blood was streaming down one side of his face, and one hand was busted wide open. But he was grinning happily because the Soches were running. We won, Derry announced in a tired voice. He's going to have a black eye, and there was a cut across his forehead. We beat the Soches. Dally stood beside me quietly for a minute and trying to grasp the fact that we had really beaten the Soches. Then, grabbing my shirt, he hauled me to my feet. Come on, he dragged me down the street. We're going to go see Johnny. I tried to run but stumbled, and Dally impatiently shoved me along. Hurry, he was getting worse when I left. He wants to see you. I don't know how Dally could travel so fast and hard after being knocked around and having his sore arm hurt some more. But I tried to keep up with him. The track wasn't ever like the running I did that night. I was still dizzy and had only the dim realization of where I was going and why. Dally had Buck Merrill's T-Bird parked in front of our house, and we hopped into it. I sat tight as Dally roared the car down the street. We were on 10th Street when a siren came on behind us, and I saw the reflection of the red light flashing in the windshield. Look sick, Dally commanded. I'll say I'm taking you to the hospital, which would be truth enough. I leaned against the cool glass of the window and tried to look sick, which wasn't too hard, feeling the way I did right then. The policeman looked disgusted. All right, buddy, where's the fire? The kid, Dally jerked a thumb towards me. He fell over on his motorcycle. I'm taking him to the hospital. I groaned, and it wasn't all fake. I guess I looked pretty bad too, being caught and bruised like I was. The fuzz immediately changed his tone. Is he real bad? Do you need an escort? How would I know if he's bad or not? I ain't no doc. Yeah, we could use an escort. And as the policeman got back in his car, I heard Dally hiss, sucker. With the siren ahead of us, we made record time getting to the hospital. All the way there, Dally kept talking and talking about something, but I was too dizzy to make it most of it out. Let me take a quick drink break. Yeah, I was crazy, kid. You know that? Crazy for wanting Johnny to stay out of trouble, for not wanting him to get hard. If he had been like me, he never would have gotten in this mess. If he'd got smart like me, he never would have run into that church. That's what you get for helping people. Editorials in the paper and a lot of trouble. You better wise up, Pony. You get tough like me and you don't get hurt. You look out for yourself and nothing can touch you. He said a lot more stuff, but I didn't get it at all. I had a stupid feeling that Dally was out of his mind, the way he kept raving on and on. Dally never talked like that. I think now I would have understood if I hadn't been so sick at the time. The cop left us at the hospital as Dally pretended to help me out of the car. The minute the cop was gone, Dally let go of me so quick I almost fell. Hurry! We ran through the lobby and crowded past people into the elevator. Several people yelled at us, I think because we were pretty beat up looking, but Dally had nothing on his mind except seeing Johnny. And I was too mixed up to know anything, but then I had to follow Dally. When we finally got to Johnny's room, the doctor stopped us. I'm sorry, boys, but he's dying. You gotta see him, Dally said, and flicked out the two-bit switchblade. His voice was shaking. We're gonna see him, and if you give me any static, you'll end up on your own operating table. The doctor didn't bat an eye. You can see him, but it's because you're his friends, not because of that knife. Dally looked at the doctor for a second, then put the knife back in his pocket. We both went into Johnny's room, standing there for a second, getting our breath back in heavy gulps. It was awful quiet. It was scary quiet. I looked at Johnny. He was very still, and for a moment I thought in agony, he's already dead. We're too late. Dally swallowed, wiping the sweat off his upper lip. Johnny cake, he said in a hoarse voice. Johnny? Johnny stirred weakly, then opened his eyes. Hey, he managed softly. We won, Dally panted. We beat the Socs. We stomped them, chased them out of our territory. Johnny didn't even try to smile at him. It's useless. Fighting's no good. Johnny was awful white. Dally licked his lips nervously. They're still writing editorials about you in the paper for being a hero and all. He was talking too fast and too calmly. Yeah, they're calling you a hero now and heroizing all the greasers. We're all proud of you, buddy. Johnny's eyes glowed. Dally was proud of him. That's all Johnny had ever wanted. Pony boy? I barely heard him. I came closer and leaned over to hear what he was going to say. Stay gold, pony boy. Stay gold. The pillow seemed to sink a little, and Johnny died. You read about people looking peacefully asleep when they're dead, but they don't. Johnny just looked dead, like a candle with the flame gone. I tried to say something, but I couldn't make a sound. Dally swallowed and reached over to push Johnny's hair back. Never could keep that hair back. That's what you get for trying to help people, you little punk. That's what you get. Whirling suddenly, he slammed back against the wall. His face contracted in agony, and sweat streamed down his face. Damn it, Johnny, he begged, slamming one fist against the wall, hammering it to make it obey his will. Oh, damn it, John, don't die. Please don't die. Dally suddenly bolted through the door and down the hallway. And that's the end of chapter 9. And to talk about the Stay Gold quote, here is Robert Frost poem from earlier in the book, and that's what Johnny's referencing so that you can think about it and discuss it. Thank you for listening.